All right, let's start our lecture on states of medieval Europe. And we're going to start with going back a little bit. We are going to look at about the year 800. We're going to fast forward pretty soon. What is the really big deal that happens in Europe in 800 is that Charlemagne, he travels to Rome. Now he travels to Rome, and at this time the Pope is in trouble. He has enemies around him in Italy. And what the Pope does is, this is a review from last time, the Pope ends up crowning Charlemagne. He puts a crown on him, and that he is picking him, basically, that he's giving him his support. Now, Charlemagne accepts this honor. He gives it to him on Christmas Day in the year 800. Charlemagne takes it, but he's also kind of like, well, I'll take this. This is basically when the Carolingian dynasty, this is called the Carolingian dynasty at this time. He takes the crown, and he says later on, if I had known the Pope was going to do this, I wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't have even gone to Rome and St. Peter's. But we don't really know if that's true. What we do see is the Pope was losing power, and by crowning Charlemagne, many people saw this as, oh, the Pope's picking him, so the Pope is okay for him to be in power. Now remember that Europe was kind of divided this time. We had Western Europe with Charlemagne's empire, the Carolingian Empire. But then we also had, in Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire. Now when the Pope did this, basically it was showing that the Pope was giving his preference for people in Western Europe, and it was also taking some power away from the Byzantine Empire. And we talked about that earlier with the difference between the Pope being more in Western Europe and the patriarchs become the religious leaders in the Byzantine Empire. So that was Charlemagne being crowned by the Pope. Now, fast forward, we're going to go in 962, so that is 162 years later. What happens is something very similar. Otto I. Otto I, who's again ruling in Western Europe, in the area mostly of Germany. He is now, the Pope wants to, the Pope crowns Otto I. And why does the Pope do this? The Pope does it because he again needs help. The Pope is kind of surrounded by his Italian enemies at this time, and he appeals to a strong German leader for a second time, and it is Otto I. So Otto I again gets coordinated by the Pope in 962, and Otto I does not call himself the Roman Emperor, but this kind of begins what we'll call the Holy Roman Empire. So Otto I doesn't call himself Holy Roman Emperor, but his son, who takes power later, uses the title. And that becomes a clear statement that pretty much the Catholic Church is aligning itself with the Holy Roman Empire, and those two are going to work together. The Pope is basically, he's in trouble in Italy with the people around him, and he appeals to basically the people in Western Europe, mostly today modern Germany, and the Holy Roman Empire, and he crowns Otto I. So Otto and his son, Otto II, and his grandson, Otto III, we'll call them the three Ottos, they basically see this imperial crown as a way that they can mandate and control the papacy. So the first Holy Roman Emperors are kind of like, we are in control of the Pope. They basically will dismiss a Pope when they want. They will get rid of a Pope if they need to. And at this point, the Emperor has much more power than the Pope. So we can see that, that the emperors have more power. And in fact, the emperors have so much power that a later on ruler in 1046 of the Holy Roman Empire, Henry III, he gets rid of popes. I mean, in 1046, he gets rid of 3 popes. Then over the next 10 years, he personally selects 4 of the next 5 popes. So pretty much the emperor, if he likes a pope, he can pick him at this point. So right now, the emperors are much stronger than the popes. So round 1 goes to the emperors. The emperors are more powerful than the popes. But the popes come back, as we see in the seesaw battle that goes back and forth between the popes and the emperors. Pope Nicholas II, who was elected in 1058, he begins a process of reform. And he condemns abuses of the church, which include the selling of some church positions Like basically you can buy a church position if you want. The marriage of the clergy in the church. And Nicholas now restricts the choice of a new pope to a conclave of cardinals. So cardinals who are upper church, one of the highest leaders in the church besides the actual pope. And taking out any lay influence. Lay influence means laity, people not of the church. So Pope Nicholas says, people of the church, the cardinals, the leaders, they will get together and they will pick the pope. Also what Nicholas does is he gives land that actually was already occupied to recipients of his own choice, and he begins basically to consolidate or get more power. So by doing this, he's taking power away from the empire, from the lay people, and he's giving it more back to the church. Now, let's continue. So now continuing, we have Pope Gregory VII comes in after Nicholas. You have Pope Nicholas who basically, begins consolidating, taking the power back. Then Pope Gregory VII comes in, and Pope Gregory VII continues this tradition. And Pope Gregory VII, what he does is, he basically says that all the church appointments, they must be made by church officials. He takes away lay investiture. Lay investiture was the ability of the emperor to pick the people in the church for positions. And Pope Gregory VII says, no. That the Pope is going to pick these, the cardinals are going to pick these. This will be done by the actual Catholic Church. So what's happening is more and more the popes are consolidating their power, and they are able to take power back from the Holy Roman Empire. So King Henry IV, or Emperor Henry IV, we're keeping score. Henry IV is the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. He doesn't like this because round 2 is now starting to look like the popes are making a comeback. They're starting to win this. So he's alarmed at these demands because it's like he doesn't want to lose his power. So what he does is he sends a threatening letter to the Pope in 1076. Basically saying, like, you don't have the right to do this, I'm the emperor. And the Pope, Gregory VII, what he does is he responds by excommunicating the emperor. He says, well, going to send a letter like that, trying to take church power, you're out of the church. So the Holy Roman Emperor, who is ruling, and also his people in his kingdom follow the church, they're like, wait a minute, our emperor has been kicked out of the church. Does that mean if we follow him, we go to hell? So basically, it becomes impossible for Henry IV to rule his people. So what Henry IV has to do is he has to pay penance and ask for forgiveness. So he goes to Canossa. And he has this excommunicated lifted. But to do that, what he has to do is, we see a picture of him here, dressed in plain clothes. And what he has to do is, he has to walk around Canossa for 3 days in the snow. When he gets to Canossa, the Pope won't see him. He's like, no, I'm going to wait. Waits 3 days, and then he forgives him. Round 2 definitely goes to the popes and the power of the church over the emperors. So this again gives, we see like there's a power shift that's going on. And what happened is, because there's these fights between the empire and the church, it actually keeps it from becoming like a real unified, strong empire at this time. Fast forward, we're going to go a little bit ahead. 1152. So 1152, Frederick Barbarossa is the leader and the Holy Roman Emperor, and he wants to extend his power. He extends it into Bohemia, Poland, Hungary, and he tries to extend his power in Italy, where he wants to take some of the papal states and get more power. So again, we see an emperor now who's getting stronger. Frederick Barbarossa wants to get more land, and he meets strong opposition from Italian communities. And they form the Lombard League. And the Lombard League is pretty much, it is a bunch of merchants, a bunch of basically like business leaders, merchants in Italy, along with the Pope, and they form a Lombard League. And they have a fight against the Holy Roman Empire, led by Frederick Barbarossa, and basically versus the Lombard League, which is the Pope's army. So we literally have like the church army fighting against the Holy Roman Empire. And the winner is the Lombard League, is able to defeat Barbarossa, and this really keeps the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire doesn't fall, but they lose this war, and it basically establishes the church does have a strong, powerful presence in Europe, and this does keep basically Western Europe from building a really strong unified empire. Had the Holy Roman Empire won this, they probably would have been able to take over Italy, more of Europe, and we would have seen the Holy Roman Empire become actually a very strong empire, and the Pope probably would have been under the emperor, just like in the Byzantine Empire. The emperor of the Byzantine Empire had the patriarch, the religious leader, underneath him. All right, so let's continue now. So that is basically the Holy Roman Empire. Now we're going to turn and we're going to look at basically how monarchy will begin to be established in England and eventually the United Kingdom. So what happens is Edward the Confessor, who was living in England, who was the king in England, he dies, and Harold Godwin becomes the new king. And there's a little bit of fighting going on. There's no clear succession, so it's given to Harold, who's not that strong. Harold Godwin is not that strong. You kind of need to know Harold. You need to know this next person. We have the next person is William the Conqueror. So William the Conqueror, he comes into England from Normandy. Normandy is in France, so comes in from Normandy, France, into England, and is able to defeat Harold at the Battle of Hastings on October 14th, 1066. So 1066, the Normans come into England, and they are able to establish control and build an Anglo-Saxon kingdom, throughout England. They basically become the people who take power in England, and slowly this group pretty much takes over all of what we see of Great Britain and Ireland over the next 800 years or so. So William the Conqueror, he comes in again from Normandy and other people from France. They bring a stronger aristocratic leadership, and basically they're able to spread out, take over territories all over England. And the Normans also expand into Scotland and Wales over time. Now, the Normans have a huge influence on the architectural development of Britain. They're basically able to take over, and we're bringing this up because what's going to slowly happen is England is going to become a huge player in world affairs. And what we're going to see is this is the birth of like the Norman influence, the Anglo-Saxon kingdom, and this is the slow build of what will be a massive British empire eventually. Now, the Normans, numbers are uncertain, but it's possible the Normans build up to about 1,000 castles all throughout England during the reign of Henry I, about 4 decades after the Norman conquest. So after they come in, basically the 1100s, castles are built to take the territory and to rule the land. If you want to see what one of these castles looks like, I got a picture right here. It's a pretty cool one. This would be Alnwick Castle, which today is located in Northumberland or in northern England, fairly close to Scotland. I know this one well because I actually got to live there for about 3.5, 4 months when I was a student at St. Cloud State University. I did an overseas program and got to live there and got to visit all these kinds of castles. So the castles are fortified. They were basically where your nobles would live. Even to this day, I'm not joking, the Duke of Northumberland still lives there. There's still an aristocracy in England. There's still a queen. There are still nobles. There are dukes who still live there. The Duke of Northumberland owns the castle and a lot of the land around it. So that is Alnwick Castle. This is an example of one of the many castles that the Normans built after they took over England.